Welcome to Roots, Routes and Voices, Stories That Shape America. I'm Clara Matonodze, your co-host and creator of the series. Every person you'll meet in this podcast has roots somewhere. A place, a language, a table they grew up at. And at some point, they chose a different route. To live, to stay, to begin again in America. What happened along that route shaped everything. And what they built when they arrived, whether it was a business, a community, lifestyles that didn't exist before they got here, that became their voice in this country. Those roots, those routes, those voices, this is what this podcast is made of.
And I'm Brian Wright, Executive Director of Cincinnati Compass and your co-host. A quick note before we begin. The views and stories shared here are those of our guests and do not reflect those of Cincinnati Compass. We believe every voice has a place, especially when it shapes the future of our cities. We would also like to thank our hosts and sponsors who made Season 2 possible, thanks to the Marketer Collaborative and the Greater Cincinnati Foundation.
Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Roots, Routes and Voices, Stories That Shape America, a Cincinnati Campus podcast. I'm your host, Clara Matonodze.
And I'm Brian Wright, Executive Director of Cincinnati Compass and your co-host. Before we dive in, the views and stories shared on this podcast are those of our guests and do not reflect those of Cincinnati Compass. We believe every voice has a place, especially when it shapes the future of our cities.
So, Brian, today I'm really excited about our guest. Do you know why?
I don't, but go ahead, tell me.
So, I don't know if you know this, Brian, but I know you do because I've talked about it a lot. I went to university in South Africa right after Mandela was elected. So, Mandela was elected in 1994, and 1995 was like my first year of college right after high school. And we were the first class of not me, but that class was the first class that had admitted Black South Africans.
Oh, wow.
Now, the University Roads had always admitted Black students from other African countries, but not Black South Africans, So I thought that was interesting. And when I heard about our guest today, who is now, grew up under apartheid and is now working in Cincinnati in a space of equity. I thought that was really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Likewise. And so as we were talking beforehand, our paths have actually crossed a few times. When one way we know we are on a board together, but then also we've found out there's some mutual coaches, partners that we know and across the region. So Janice Liebenberg left South Africa and came to the USA as an au pair. She changed her visa to study and then stayed. She spent a decade at ArtsWave where she helped channel real money toward Black artists and Black-led arts organizations. And she now leads development at the Urban League of Greater Southwestern Ohio.
Awesome. So what I find compelling today, especially about Janice, is the thorough line of her story, right? She's a young woman who was shaped deeply by an unequal society, goes on to spend a career building systems that move resources towards the people those systems used to live out. And so I think that's pretty admirable.
All right, let's get into it.
Let's absolutely get into it. Hi, Janice.
Hi, Clara.
Welcome to Roots, Routes and Voices, Stories That Shape America.
Thank you so much. I am so flattered that you're interested in my story, and I am happy to share a little bit about my journey with your audience today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Me too. And I'm so glad that you accepted. For a while there, I'm like, I don't know if she's going to accept. It's always like nervous having guests say
all
yes.
you had to do was copy Brian because that matched the way.
That clicked her. Yeah. So let's start at the beginning. As we're talking, our podcast is called Roots, Routes, and Voices. And the idea is we're going to go through your story, your roots, where you were born and grew up literally, the route that brought you to America that could be literal or not literal, but like how did you get to America? And then the voice you now have. And we know you have such a strong voice in the community. So we are doing this in order to contribute to the conversation in America, right, about what do immigrants bring.
Yes.
And also humanizing the places where immigrants are coming from to show, hey, look at all the successes that we now have. So let's start with you growing up in South Africa. And what was an ordinary day like for you? Like who taught you how the world was organized? Just take us through a typical day for you growing up in South Africa.
Well, thank you, Clara. First, I think I need to share a little bit how I identify because, I'd like to, start with that. I am a multiracial woman born and raised during apartheid South Africa. And so I feel that I bring a perspective that, that I have shared here in the United States that has helped me, all my life in the United States. But yes, I came to the United States a while back. And, if I think about growing up, I have to share that everything felt normal. It wasn't any, one thing that shaped me. But, I went to school. I did my homework. I played a ton of sports, and, I remember playing outside and there were not even street lights and it was really dark at night, but, you trust everybody. Mm-hmm. And so, it wasn't, even, is this ordinary or out of the ordinary growing up? I was just a child and did normal things,
right.
Until, you realize you cannot go certain places. Mm-hmm. And you started to learn to read and understand what those signs mean. Mm-hmm. Whites only. That was a pretty big sign growing up for me.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until
What years are these? Well, what's like a general 10-year period of your childhood? Because I'm not going to ask a lady her age, but...
I'm not... I'm not opposed to sharing my age, but I think I was about 8 or 9 years old at the time. I am knocking on 50, coming up here in the next year or so. So it was when I was about 8 or 9 years old.
Okay,
and the first
in the 80s.
Yes, in the 80s. Yeah. The big thing, there were the signs. You had to get on the bus, in the back of the bus. But the big thing for me growing up, when I first realized something was really wrong, was when we took our annual camping trip to the beach, where you pitch a tent, the entire family is there. When one morning we were asked to leave that beach because it was for whites only. And so that to me became a point in my life where things don't feel normal anymore.
Yeah. So there was apartheid by design, because apartheid obviously divided people by design. And this was probably a point when you were first understanding what that meant. And I think a lot of Americans have come to know and understand how apartheid worked in South Africa, from Trevor Noah, with his funny crime where he would talk about him growing up multiracial and how literally his parents could not walk holding hands on the same street.
Yes, it was illegal to have interracial marriage or even relationships, yes.
Did you have something similar like that? Or because you mentioned you're multiracial?
Yes.
Yeah, so talk to us a little bit more about what that meant and
Certainly.
How multiracial you are and how that manifested in your day-to-day life with your parents.
Yes. So my heritage is Native South African. Khoisan is the indigenous group that I'm closely tied to. And then I have Dutch and Malaysian as part of my heritage. And, South Africa was settled twice, first by the Dutch in the 1600s and then again by the British in the 1800s. But the Dutch is who brought the Malaysian slaves to Cape Town to build their castle and other, big things there. And so there was, children born out of master-slave relationships. And there is now a community of those children born out of master-slave relationships. And, most commonly, we are referred to as the Cape Coloreds.
Cape Coloreds.
Cape Coloreds.
Yeah.
But it is a colored community that, stayed that way, that could not, identify as white or, Asian or, Black.
Yeah.
It is a colored community was created out of that.
Yeah.
That's not, how did your having that experience at the beach and then in the background of your family, how did your family talk about it with you? You talk about when you learned to read, you could read the signs and such, but was it something that it seems like you always have to navigate a space and be mindful of safety. But how did your parents talk about this, like these signs and how you were experiencing it and preparing for that kind of environment?
I think, my opinion was more shaped by things not said or spoken. And I don't remember a time my parents set us down. So I'm one of 8 kids. I have to share that. There were a lot of us. So one of 8 kids. And I don't remember any specific time where they set us down to share what that meant. We all watched the news together. On the little small black and white television. And I have to say, it's more of what they didn't say. We asked questions, plenty of questions about what was going on, but there was no real moment where they okay, this is what's going on. What I did notice is that my mom started organizing in politics. And so she, wanted to stand up for what was right, what was fair, what was right. And I remember that part more than anything else, that she started mobilizing and acting in a way to not just for her children, but for a community.
Right.
And so I don't remember any given moment where we were sat down to talk about what's going on. Yeah, we didn't have the talk. We asked questions, but it was more about what was not said that shaped me.
Yeah.
But that's still powerful to see your mom getting involved in civil rights and activism work.
Well. Did you understand why she was doing it?
Yes, I did understand. At that time, there was a ton of propaganda coming our way, and the narrative, wildly known now, but at the time, Nelson Mandela was a terrorist. We were told he was a very dangerous terrorist, and that if, we don't come together to fight, what was happening, releasing him from prison. Yeah. First of all, how can he be so dangerous? He's in prison, right? But of course, we know that there was a whole
movement like the ANC in exile.
Yes, behind it. But to answer the question, it was very powerful to, as a child, see how your mom gets involved. She was a housewife at the time, doing lots of little business entrepreneurship ventures she had, but also taking the time to go to meetings after, we had dinner to make sure that she was involved for her children.
So Janice, were your mom and dad also coloreds, or?
Yes.
Was it?
Yes, they were both product.
They were not like an interracial marriage.
No. We were already, pushed to a group.
And then you'd have to,
group. And so they married.
And I think also for the sake of our American audience, an explanation of what coloreds mean, because I think colored in America has a very different meaning from colored in Southern Africa generally, because even me growing up in Zimbabwe, coloreds tend to be the name that was given to mixed race people. It wasn't mixed race, it wasn't biracial, they were called coloreds. And not so much as like Black people.
Yes, yeah. True. I'm happy to do that because it is different. In fact, when I said one time, this brown girl, people were looking at me like that is not what it means here in the United States.
Yeah.
But colored means you're not 100% white and you're not 100% Black. Somewhere along the line, you have Indian, Asian, as part of your heritage, or you're the product of Black and white. But colored got its own denomination, if you will.
Its own racial group, I think, almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Which after the first Democratic election, everyone in South Africa became known in their passports because of the trauma of all these, distinctions, that you are a South African citizen. And that was very powerful, what Nelson Mandela did because of all the racial trauma we were experiencing.
Yeah. Oh, so that was not in the passport before?
You're black, white, or colored in your passport. Your passbook is what they call it.
The passbook. Yeah. Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when in this context, when you're growing up and you talked a little bit about your parents, one of 8 kids, and you talked about like just, you mentioned like a normal life, like in like your neighborhood where you were growing up, and like, was it like you and your family and friends, and like, we've talked with in other interviews around, there was in the neighborhood just other extended family members and others they were just their own family and had just neighbors. And so can you talk a little bit about, who was in your neighborhood and like growing up, and like did a relative or a teacher or a person kind of stand out to help guide you towards this pathway towards higher education and to where you are now, but just like starting there early on?
There were a lot of people who shaped who I am today. I already shared, most notably, that was my mother. She's no longer with us, but that was her. I, just remember her grit and her resilience, raising 8 children.
Yeah.
And I could barely raise my 3 children today, but she did that. We grew up in a village almost on the outskirts of Cape Town. And so everyone around me looked exactly like me. We were exactly of similar heritage, where you were multiracial and you were pushed together, right? And when we traveled into the big city of Cape Town, that's when you see people who are white, people who are black, the big signs. It was not in my neighborhood. So growing up, everybody looked like me, which is why I can say it felt normal.
Yeah.
I was a little bit protected by that. And, to go back to the question, was there a sit down of what, this means, apartheid means? And there wasn't. And I can understand why, because today as a mother, I know I have to, just as much as I want to protect my children from the elements, I have to educate them about the elements. And I think we were more protected.
Yeah.
Back in the day. But my mom is, the person who shaped me. There were sports coaches that shaped me. I said that, I played a lot of sport. I was a sprinter, and I played soccer and netball, which is a sport that doesn't exist in the United States. Think of basketball.
The closest is handball, I think.
Well,
because I've tried to explain netball as well. Because I played netball, and I've tried to explain netball, and I'm like, the closest I can come to explaining it is a mixture of basketball and handball.
Yes, and I use basketball most often because the difference in netball and basketball is, in netball, when you have the ball, you have to stand still. And in basketball, you dribble with that ball, but you run back and forth. There's 2 hoops on either side of the court, and you have to make a basket for you to score a point. There's lines where, certain positions cannot enter or leave in netball, but it is closely related to basketball.
And the net is about half the height of the
and there's
basketball.
No backboard.
So it's just like post and hoop.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's nothing.
5 or
7.
7.
Yes.
So you're playing sports, and sounds like a variety of sports. So netball, soccer, or football. Did you call it football, or did you call it soccer?
Soccer. Yes, we did call it soccer, and adopted football pretty quickly after that. To like the rest of the world, except for America.
Which I don't.
I know, it's irresistible. That comment is always irresistible.
Coming to America felt like I was coming to a new planet almost. That's how really foreign, I felt.
Yes.
But coaches shaped me because that was sport was an outlet for me. And so the adults I was in close contact with were my coaches.
Mm-hmm. And we'll get to we want to dive into like how the U.S. seemed like such a foreign place and so bizarre and almost like alien. But like what before that and before the U.S. entered the picture for you, what did you imagine your life would look like? Like what were your dreams and aspirations? Like did you think you would stay in South Africa? Did you ever move to another country in Africa? Or did you what were your dreams and visions at that time?
So I never thought I would leave South Africa. I was a product of my curiosity and wanting to have access to higher education. Mm-hmm. And I, was growing up with 7 other kids in the house. And if anyone was going to college, it was one of my 3 brothers, not one of the 5 girls in the household at that time. That was the mentality at the time. The men get the opportunity because
education.
Because I'm going to marry into someone that has to take care of me. And that was still the mentality. Hence why I didn't change my name, because I don't feel like I am anybody's property.
There you go.
As colonialism would make you believe back in the day. But jumping into right before I came to the United States. So I was in South Africa. There was a first Democratic election in 94. I was just about to matriculate high school, and my options were bleak.
Right.
Very, very bleak. I worked in a retail store right after high school. There was no college, no even certification that I could go pursue on my own because my parents didn't have the means to get me there. So I was curious, wanted to go to college, saved up a ton of money to buy that ticket to come to the United States. And all I wanted to do was work for a year here in the United States and go back home to go to college. But look how well that turned out.
The best laid plans, right?
Yes.
So how did I hear what you're saying around wanting to go somewhere for high school, but I'm sorry if I missed it. Did you come to the U.S. for high school? Or
No.
That was after.
No,
so you did high school, but how did the U.S. come into the picture for like, what were you coming here to the U.S. to do for work?
So the U.S. was not really the destination that I wanted. I didn't choose to come to the United States. I think it chose me. I wanted to make money to pay for college. And at that time, there was a little bit of a movement where American families needed, in-home help to raise their children. And they looked to countries like South Africa, set up some organizations like Au Pair in America that was in Cape Town, that advertised very heavily and made it sound like it was going to be one big vacation. It was not the case.
Like a vacation and then making money at the same time.
Yes.
Some way to put it.
Yes. Come have this cultural experience or exchange in turn for raising someone's children in the United States. It was very appealing.
Yeah.
And so I applied, and someone from Cincinnati was my first call. And how do you make a decision of where you go in the United States? It's so huge.
Right.
At the time when I got the call, my only reference was that television sitcom about a radio station,
Cincinnati.
WKRP in Cincinnati. So that made it to South Africa, and that was my reference. So I thought, okay, it is at least on the map.
It almost doesn't matter, like where you go to at least for me, where you go to the in the US, like you're just in the US. That's what matters.
You're in the room, right?
You're in the US. You're in the room. It doesn't matter which part you're staying, as long as you're.
Well, it was hard the first couple of years because everyone was so excited here about a river, and I'm coming from the ocean, right? And like big, beautiful sea, and there's brown river.
Oh, I love it.
And everyone's like, let's go to the river. And I'm like, why? So just to share a little bit about that. But But that's why I came. I wanted access to higher education. I fully believed in the promise of once you're educated, no one can take that away from you.
Correct. Yeah.
And I wanted something more. I was very curious. I read a lot of books with my mom. I did a lot of crossword puzzles with my mom. I wanted to know more. And to me, that meant going to university or going to college. The only way I could do that was to save enough money, hence
to do that. Yeah.
coming to the United States. But then, there was a turn of events, which I'm happy to share at some point too. But I eventually stayed because I just, on a whim, applied to UC and they accepted me.
Yeah.
Nice.
So you originally came as an au pair. What surprised you most about Cincinnati once you were here, or America in general?
Well, first of all, no one had left Cincinnati, the people I spoke to. That was very strange that, you haven't left your city versus your state. We call it provinces in South Africa, but your state, and then, you don't really know what it means to leave this country. And why would you? There's so much opportunity here. So I do understand that part.
Yeah, it used to baffle me too initially, but then you start to realize, there's really no point. Everything is where you need it to be.
Right.
Yeah.
But I felt so rich coming to learn about a new country and culture, and I hope that everyone think about that. That you are just richer if you travel.
Right.
So I hope everyone does. But I came here and I felt really rich because I got to learn a new people, a new culture, and Cincinnati specifically. Everybody asks you, what high school did you go to? And in Cincinnati, I couldn't understand the chili thing, and I guess most my kids like it. I still don't eat it as much. I appreciate the vegetarian options because I don't eat meat that much, and it's not really part of our diet at home. But there were some subtle things that made me like, what?
What about the job as an au pair? Because I can imagine child rearing in South Africa and child rearing in the U.S. as an au pair are like night and day.
True. I from a big family. I watched or babysat or helped raise my younger siblings, and then also my older siblings' kids.
Yeah.
That was the dynamic. So I felt like I was ready for more childcare. It was different. Kids had a lot of freedom here to speak. Where I come from,
exactly.
You have to really you can speak when spoken to, and so that was strange. Not strange. That was different. I don't want to make it. That's how I teach my kids. You should be able to negotiate, and you should be able to challenge adults in a respectful way. I welcome that. And so, but that was very new
at the time. Yeah, you had to learn
that.
For me. Yeah.
I was also very, surprised how hard people work in the United States. How very little vacation people take, and how very little vacation I got working as a babysitter. And then the big thing for me, and this has nothing to do with the question you asked me, but I wanted to share it. I was compelled to lose my accent because the kids didn't understand me. They're like looking at me about, what did you just say?
Yeah. So you have to learn pretty fast.
I had to
enunciate in a way they can understand.
Yes, I had to, say how Americans pronounce things to, be relevant to this child that I want, to be that figure of authority, but also a trust. I had to build trust that way, and that was what did it for me.
Wow, that's a lot of skills in such a short time that you have to learn.
True.
Yeah.
Yes. I had to learn how to drive on the other side of the road. the wrong side.
The wrong side.
I came from a country where we drive on the left. So that was a little bit of an adjustment. But,
Yeah.
I made it happen.
Yeah. Wonderful.
So when you decided to go to university, what did you study?
So
Would you go to study?
So I applied to UC, and I went to UC Blue Ash for the 2 years that I was at UC, and I wanted to be a psychologist. So I did study. I took a lot of classes, even in the first 2 years, to be ready for psychology. And then, Northern Kentucky University gave me a scholarship. So I drove that bridge in my sleep because, it was affordable then. When you're an international student, you're considered out of state for all 4 years of your education. You do the math and how that means, what that means for tuition. But, NKU gave me a scholarship. And so I was drawn to industrial and organizational psychology, how people work in teams, how people work in workplaces, what motivates, members of a team to do things. That was very interesting to me. So I finally graduated from NKU with a Bachelor of Science in psychology.
I was waiting for it.
And I feel like I've used my degree every single day of my life as a fundraiser because you adjust how you present yourself. You use words to match your audience. And it just made me a very versatile in a way that I could speak to the janitor or the CEO. And so, again, I use my degree every single day of my life.
Yeah, industrial psychology, you're not the first person who has told me this who is an immigrant. Like, it's one of those niche where I've talked to someone else who's like, there's no other degree that prepares you for integrating into America than industrial psychology, because you learn a lot, not only about what you're learning in psychology, but also about the psychology of the country and the city you're in.
True.
And that makes it pretty easy to integrate.
And I will even push it a stretch further. I wanted to understand what motivates people to do the things. I come from a country where
what
racism was legalized. And
the government.
What must happen to a people to want to do this to other people? So,
did you ever come up with an answer?
Yeah, because we're still trying to figure that here in the U.S. too, right? So, racism was legalized, is legalized in the U.S. too. So, we need that answer.
When I have the answer, you are the first people I will call.
So you have not come up with the jury's still out on that.
Yes.
So we are already talking a little bit about your routes. We've talked a lot actually about your routes coming to America and landing in Cincinnati, and all the initial impressions you had in South Africa and what you had to do in order to feel like coming from South Africa, and all the initial work you had to do in order to feel that you're part of this beautiful city. So was there a point when Cincinnati stopped feeling like I'm here temporarily and it really started feeling like home? What was that point for you?
I clearly remember this because I reflect on that all the time. And at some point you give up your citizenship in the country that you love, and it's driving by, where you are in a moment and what makes you feel at home. And for me...
did you have to give up your South African citizenship? There's no dual citizenship for South Africa?
I'm not a dual citizen. There is now that opportunity. But I am a United States citizen, so I am an American. And my friends call me the one true African American because I'm from Africa and now I'm an American.
Yes, I absolutely agree 1,000%.
So there's that. But, I worked, my first job out of college was at the EW Scripps Company, and I specifically worked in development for the Scripps National Spelling Bee, and the headquarters of Scripps is downtown. Yeah. And so I moved downtown to be closer to my job. And it hadn't been until I did that and hung out in Over-the-Rhine and eventually moving to Over-the-Rhine. So I've been living in Over-the-Rhine for 15 years plus. It hadn't feel like home until I did that, because back then, after the riots in Cincinnati, there were a group of young professionals that moved into Over-the-Rhine and wanted to be part of rewriting the history or the story, at least, of, Over-the-Rhine. Buildings were abandoned and they wanted to just breathe new life into the community. And so I latched onto that and became part of that community. And at that moment in time, for me, distinctly, Cincinnati felt like home.
Oh, I remember that period very, very well. And I've always felt like I missed the opportunity to own property in Over-the-Rhine because I was so scared. Like, you had to believe that this would work. And I remember just going, I don't know, and feeling like, I don't think that's going to work. But now it's like, it totally worked.
I'm a risk taker and I love change.
Yeah.
So that will be a couple of big things that you hear me say here, but I go for it. I bought a one-way ticket to the United States pretty much. So there's not much about risk that I don't know, right?
Right.
But, we bought property and, we're raising our 3 children in Over-the-Rhine. And we say we are never moving. We already know where the elevator is going in our home.
Now you're not so willing to take a risk with the kids.
I hear you talking like this. I hear you talking in a way about meeting people where they are. You've talked about in several ways of meeting people where they are, to extreme of like adjusting your accent so that other people can better understand you. Which I understand that to a point, but also your accent is who you are. It shows a history, it shows a culture, it shows all those beautiful things about all of us have that accent, right? But I think it's it says a lot about you trying to make people feel comfortable, but also to build community. And you talked about when you started to feel at home, the way I hear is you were talking about a way of because I'm building community, and you talked about with your industrial organization degree and just being able to talk to the janitor in the same way as the CEO, because we're all humans and have dignity in our work and have a voice. So I just hear you you haven't said that explicitly, but that's what I'm hearing coming out from what you're saying. And it just seems like that gets into some of the other work too that you're doing, but it's not a question, it's just an observation.
Well, thank you for the observation. I will say that, changing, my accent was just to communicate to the children, I was taking care of at that time. To me, that built trust. And I needed them to trust me. I was driving them around and I wanted them to do a few things, enforcing the rules of the household. And when you come in as a new person, it's really hard. And so I did that for that reason. I love my accent. It makes me who I am. And, I am not afraid to be who I am, because in many ways, what makes me powerful, I think, right? But community comes from home. I grew up in a big household. A big, 7 siblings. Both my parents came from big families. And so that always felt like a community. You have your best friends living under the same roof with you. And so it comes from that, Brian. But thank you for that observation and allowing me to share a little bit more.
Oh, that's great.
A word from our studio home this season. Ruth Strauss and Voices records at the Marketer Collaborative at 15 East 14th Street in Cincinnati. It's a space built for people who believe that creative work and meaningful work belong in the same room. We do too. Schedule your tour at themarketercollab.com.
So, Janice, your chapter 8, you talk about working at EW Scripps and the National Spelling Bee. coordinating sponsors and operations. And was this your first, when we talk in immigrant terms, like real job? Because it's like when most people come to America, you have jobs that you do that are like survival jobs. And it's always like I'm angling for my first real job, which is usually a corporate job. So was this your first real job?
Well, my most important job was serving as a poll worker during the first democratic elections in South Africa in '94. I always talk about that because I had some odd jobs. I think I've worked probably full time since I was 16, but at 17, I worked the polls because I wasn't able to vote, and I wanted to be part of that history in a meaningful way. But working at Scripps, working at Scripps was my first real corporate job.
Awesome.
It's where I learned how the sausage was made.
And that was going to be my question. Like, what did that job teach you about money, about mission, about everything else that's informed your professional life?
A ton. It was a very big experience for me, and I was just happy to be part of it. As I said, I learned how to make the sausage, or I learned how the sausage was made.
The sausage was made.
And I learned that, how big investments can shape a mission.
Yeah.
I learned why people give, why people sponsor things. I learned how to tell a story because at Scripps, and specifically for the Scripps National Spelling Bee, the mission was, to cultivate the next generation of journalists. And, I latched onto that storytelling, which is what any fundraiser should be doing. Just tell the story.
Just tell the story.
Mission.
Yeah.
And it will land with some people in organizations, and it will not. And you just stay true to the story.
Right.
Do the research on what is their corporate social responsibility. That drives factors too. But that was a big moment. It was also big because I helped change the operational plan for the Scripps National Spelling Bee. The bee was a free program for many schools and children. And my work as a babysitter, as a nanny, I just know how parents here in the United States will pick up the tab for something so that their kid can participate. And so I helped where we made the bee a fee. There was a fee that introduced, and we became this small program that I started working off, and then I helped making it a big program where it was pay to play.
And that's interesting. And so as a free program, it wasn't as big, and then once you start pay to play, more families came in.
Yes, and here's why. Sponsors then, started, we offered more opportunity for visibility for sponsors in that way. It was kind of a way to elevate the sponsor too, because they had been paying the trip to DC for the speller and families for a long time, but there wasn't much glory in that. But it was how many schools get to participate. But also, with my knowledge that mom and dad will pay the fee for the kid to be part of the chess club or whatnot, and so we introduced it, and it stayed. It changed the face of the bee forever.
Nice, wonderful.
It's almost counterintuitive. You think like that free would mean.
I know that's what I was thinking, but then it makes sense to say it makes sense that when it's free, then you have the organization EW Scripps just going, we only have, I don't know, $50,000 and that's it. Whereas if you open it up, pay to play, then it's like, as long as you can pay, you can be part of it.
When there's skin in the game, right? A free program, a speller might not show up to participate, but when there's skin in the game. There is a responsibility for the participation and bringing that speller to the stage. And so it just felt the shift happened when we did that.
Yeah. So you learned how to, you obviously learned how sponsorships and operations work in corporate media, right? And then at some point, I guess you took that skill and pointed it towards somewhere else. ArtsWave?
Yes.
Would that be accurate?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about ArtsWave then. What did the organization look like then, and what did you set out to build when you were part of ArtsWave? Because I'm also very familiar with ArtsWave, Brian. Yeah.
A little bit, but I always love to learn more, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think most people in Cincinnati, we love ArtsWave. ArtsWave, actually, let me just tell you a little bit of story. So back in the day when I was a student, I'm not sure if they still have student opportunities, but back when I was a student, they had a program where you could buy like season tickets for everything that's arts related in Cincinnati for something like $100.
Yes, that is true. It was like, enjoy the art or something.
You could go to the theater, like anything that ArtsWave, it was like $100 flat fee. I had so much fun. I miss that.
I missed that too, because I did the same thing. I bought that pass, or I was given a pass first.
Yeah.
But I bought that pass, and I was introduced to many arts organizations. But it wasn't until I learned that Scripps had a paid volunteer program. So they give you time off to volunteer. So after I bought the pass and learned about the arts here, I started volunteering for the arts organizations, and I had so much fun, going to meetings with other leaders at arts organizations to secure support for said arts organization. That was so much fun. And I'm like, boy, there's got to be a career in that.
Yes.
Lo and behold, that is what ArtsWave does. And in 2014, I joined the ArtsWave team. And ArtsWave was a very strong organization when I joined.
It is very strong.
This community was built on the arts. And there was tremendous pride in the institutions and tremendous support thanks to the Tafts.
Yes, the Tafts, yes, absolutely.
That laid a foundation for love of arts and culture in this community. So ArtsWave was strong when I joined. But, I think, I joined at a time where a moment presented itself of relevance. Are we relevant? And how can we be more inclusive? I think I joined at that time.
And can you talk a little bit about those two things around how can we be more relevant and how can we be more accessible and inclusive? And what did your work look like to kind of address those two things? What did you do? Because you kind of shifted from the corporate sector to a more art space. And I think that I moved here in 2008, and art is a big umbrella, right? But from performance art to visual art to the artist communities, Cincinnati was already kind of like punching above its weight class as far as from the opera and the symphony to now the Shakespeare. And so there's a lot of great arts community, but also just visual artists and then spoken word and others. It's just, it's really vibrant community, not only like big institutions, but there's a good pipeline that's developing. I see that now, but it seems like you were also part of that work early on to do that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I can. So when I started, it wasn't, all about inclusion right away. That came, a little bit after that. There was so they wanted to create groups of belonging. And what I wanted to do when I first started at ArtsWave was I wanted to tell as many people to go to the arts. I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
Go see something. Go hear something. Go be part of some arts. It is just that cool to be in Cincinnati at that time when we have all of this readily available. So I wanted to tell as many people to go see the arts.
And at a fraction of the price too. That's one thing I've always loved about Cincinnati. The arts are so vibrant and not as expensive, at least in my opinion.
Yes,
As
but
when I
someone
go to see
has
this.
to
Yeah.
be the messenger to share where and how, and everything that goes into getting somebody in the door to experience that art, right? And at the time there was some affinity groups. There was things geared toward young professionals, and there was things geared toward African Americans, and it all took shape right as I started. And I just volunteered to be part of that work. I said, can I do that? I know a thing or two about, yes.
Raising money.
But I wanted to be part of, the affinity groups. How do you curate an experience for an African American person versus a young professional person? Or, I just wanted to be part of that when I first started at ArtsWave, which was in 2014.
And I think you did great, Janice. Like, I'm not kidding. I can tell a difference. Having lived in Cincinnati since 2000, I came into the US in 99, but lived in Cincinnati since 2000, and just being part of the city's vibrancy and growth. And when the efforts first started to say, ArtsWave, so it would be like, ArtsWave can now fund Biokoto. They can now fund the African American drum and dance, and so you could definitely see the change coming through and the money coming through. And I think it was around your leadership. But I want us to tell us more, since you're an insider, about the change in those communities because of the work that you were doing or because the money started showing up. Like, do you see that change now? Does it feel like that has been a key impact that has lasted?
Yes, I do. I do think that. And when I started, ArtsWave did fund organizations like Biokoto and others. And so I didn't start that. I have to be clear about that.
But I know it wasn't always funded.
It wasn't always funded.
Yeah,
it was funded very small grants made available through, and ArtsWave has a system where they have, sustaining impact, where they give, repeat grants to in bigger amounts, organizations that, appear to be, that will be around for a while. Their finances looks good, and I always say chicken and egg, give them the funding so that their finances can look good, right?
Yeah.
So there's that
like,
too.
They're not staying because they don't have money, but they need the money in order to sustain themselves.
And that work did happen while I was there, to give bigger grants to these organizations that needed the most. But the one of the bigger things that I want to talk about to share is that during my time there, and what I was involved in was the first ever grant for independent artists. ArtsWave had always been an organization that support other organizations, not individual artists.
Yeah.
But
And that's so key.
it is. There are people who create every single day, and none of their work ever appear in a way or fashion for others to enjoy. And that work started when I was there, and it became, it had been thought about and envisioned, but the pandemic realized how prepared we were to really push that effort. And the city was a player in that work. But independent artists, for the first time, had opportunity to receive some funding, to create, and then to be able to showcase their work.
I just feel like that's just so crucial because, something I hear a lot with, we work with immigrant refugee communities. And so we hear so often is that we want to see ourselves represented in the cultural offerings. And so whether it's someone on stage singing or performing, or like an artist who has a painting, like, they want to be able to see themselves reflected in that. And to be able to do that, there's an entrepreneurial aspect to it. There's untapped talent, if you will, an independent artist who don't have the social capital or the connections and also the financial resources. So to be able to fill that gap, of be able to provide money to independent artists builds their capacity because they're also part of a community. So it just strengthens the entire creative ecosystem, if you will. And I think that's just so crucial that you did that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And I think WavePool should get a shout out too, because they have done tremendous work with immigrant artists and, sharing their stories and bringing their voices to the forefront. And so, I didn't create anything, right? I raised the money and, we built something at ArtsWave, and I was a big part of that. But WavePool had done that for immigrant artists, and it wasn't really the only benefit wasn't really just for the immigrant artists to create, but it was also for the people who had never left Cincinnati to experience a small portion of a faraway place or community or culture. That part was also equally important.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It affects the whole community, right? Because even for us immigrants, we've come from other places. I know WavePool, I've seen a lot of artists. It allows all of us to enjoy and experience another culture, Guatemala, Peru, the food, India. It gives that platform for all of us in the city to be able to at least imagine.
It makes the world a little smaller.
Yes, it definitely does.
For us, which makes us relate better. And so I 100% agree with you.
Right.
Yeah, and it touches too on the other thing you were talking about, how it exposes. You talk about when you first moved here, that everyone was from here and had never really left. But in this work that you're talking about, it provides someone to travel in their mind, right, in their ideas and dreams, but also it opens up the possibility to be able to go somewhere else because they feel more comfortable, because they can recognize it, because they've seen it through the arts.
Yes.
And then they're motivated. And so it just opens that dreaming possibility, which is crucial to travel and moving and being more comfortable with people from all around the world, right?
And ultimately it changed perspective and more acceptance. That part, once you understand something because you've now seen and touched, something from a different culture, it's real.
You crave more.
It's real, and you can begin to understand.
Yes. All right. So for a decade, you were building all of this wonderful work within the arts community with ArtsWave. And then in 2024, you made the move to a different kind of institution with a different kind of mission. So let's talk about the Urban League.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about the Urban League. I love talking about the Urban League.
That's wonderful. What made 2024 the right moment to step into the Urban League? And after building a decade in the arts world, and maybe you can start by defining what it is that the Urban League does.
Yes. So the Urban League is on a mission to end generational poverty. And what we do...
Mission.
Yes. And what we do is we equip individuals to become self-reliant. So economic empowerment is how we do that. We provide access to skills and tools for individuals to go out and find a job and then, earn money and be able to buy their first home. And that's how you create generational wealth, which is, the opposite of that poverty piece, right? We're going to create wealth for everyone who walks through our doors. And that's what the Urban League does. We, foster economic empowerment and self-reliance. And we do that through workforce development and credit build and credit repair. And so we do teach financial education as well. But ultimately, our goal and our mission is to end generational poverty in this community.
Are you often confused with the NAACP?
No.
No?
No, not
Okay.
at all. Not at all. We actually work really well together with the
NAACP.
Yes, NAACP. That's the one. But we work together because their mission too is, as we are also in the racial justice space with our Center for Social Justice in Avondale, where we work with the police force and, make things more fair when a person encounters an officer.
Right.
And what that means. We work with the NAACP to have access to voting. So voter registration is big in our work together. But no, we're never confused. Not in my mind, no.
Yeah, I don't see it, but I think it's important, like you said, to have those, internally to focus on economic self-sufficiency through the lens of racial justice, but then also combining that economic empowerment to build generational wealth, combining that with civic engagement.
Yes.
And that partnership, I think, with the NAACP is crucial, as well as some of the other partners that the Urban League has, because you all don't work it doesn't seem like you work in a silo. You have key partners in the work that you do.
You must. You can't do the work alone, and which is why we, invite corporate partners, philanthropic partners, the government. We invite everyone to own that we all want to work in this community to benefit the community. I always say at the Urban League, we are developing corporate America's next employee or their next customer, and they should pay attention to their next employee or the next customer.
So how do people get engaged? So like, say, for instance, me, if I wanted to be part of, I'm trying to understand exactly how the Urban League works. Are you working through individuals? Are you working through institutions? Like, how would somebody be able to get involved in what you're doing?
We help everybody, or try to help everybody walk through our doors. And our big advertisement is word of mouth. It is a client that came through and enjoyed our services, that has a brother who needs the services, or a neighbor. And that's really how, the word spread of what we do. We do other things in the community with other companies. Like, we're in Avondale, so we try to serve that community a little different, right? And so there's the Avondale Empowerment Day that Fifth Third Bank helps to put on. And so, we go into companies and we share with companies, hey, your employer is a partner of ours, and those employees have siblings and neighbors who need our services. And that's how we get the word out for someone to come to our offices and walk through our doors, that once you're in there, we follow you around for 12 months, figuring out which services you need, meeting you where you're at, and finding out who's in the household, who can benefit from the services that we provide for free to everyone who walk through the door. And I want to go back to your question about 2024. Why now? Why did I make that change? Yeah. Right? Because I had been at ArtsWave for 10 years, and 10 years felt like such a natural reevaluation moment in my life. And I had work, under equity programming in that space for a while. And of course, it's only a percentage of the funding that goes to the work that I so dearly think it's important and love and enjoy. And when I did the reevaluation, I wanted an opportunity where equity was the only item on the agenda. And that's why I made the shift.
That's wonderful.
That's fantastic.
You look like you have a 10-year span.
I'm very loyal. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yes, this day and age. And I mean, I was having a conversation with someone about I think it was in regards to maybe presidential terms, I can't remember, where they felt like 8 or 10 years were too long. And I'm like, but I honestly feel like you need about 10 years to actually make a change and see some impact before you decide, okay, let's move on. You know? So I'm like, I also feel like I personally have a 10-year span on anything, you know.
And
it's
that,
like
while
a
that's
evaluation to say,
yes.
okay, this is what I've tried, and then I've changed strategies. I've tried to do this, and then at the 10-year mark, you can really evaluate, you know, whether to move forward, whether this was a success or a failure.
I also think that after 10 years, you know, it becomes not stale, but
it just becomes rot. Like the passion is not there.
It becomes a habit.
Yeah,
and at that point, you lose your effectiveness. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, I think 10 years, nobody should stay longer than 10 years because you want to make room for the next generation of talent too, to make their mark.
Correct.
So that's, you know, where I was at that moment in time.
It makes perfect sense. So how is fundraising, I mean, what are some of the stark differences you see between fundraising for an organization like ArtsWave and working for an organization like the Urban League in how maybe corporate America perceives and receives your mission?
You know, it's different but the same. I'll share that, you know, this city was built on the arts, and so there is always going to be that affinity to support the arts first and foremost for some individuals until you tell the Urban League story. And we are trying to tell the story in a way where we can reach more people. You know, we reach not enough people to know what we do, to be able to share what we do. And so we are out there telling the story. And the fundraising is not any different than arts fundraising because you're telling a story, and whomever who hears the story is either going to say, yes, I want to support that, or no, that's not something I want to support. And that was true for the arts too. There were people who thought that it was frivolous to support the arts and wanted to save their dispensable income for something else, right? Most notably, between the arts and the work that we do at the Urban League, you know, it is government's priority it should be everybody's priority to, you know, support. Invest and support so that, you know, everybody rise out of, you know, what's happening. But right now, government supports us more than corporate America. That might be the most notable difference as I'm trying to change the narrative.
Well, that's amazing, Janice. And I want us to tie it all together as we come to the conclusion of our talk here. So you and your husband, Andrew, have raised your family in Over-the-Rhine.
Yes.
Given everything that we discussed from the work that you do in the different mission-based organizations, in the corporate world, you're growing up in South Africa. How are you designing your family with Andy and also the choice to move and live over the Rhine? Because I know that's a very deliberate choice that you mentioned earlier. How does this all come together for you?
You know, I just try to be relevant and do work that matter and leave a legacy with my children where they want to do, you know, the same. Yes, they will have their own voices. Yes, they will have their own paths. But I want them to understand that, you know, if they just, you know, work a little harder, dream a little bigger, reach a little higher, that they too can make a difference on their own path. You know, living in Over-the-Rhine was very deliberate. It was the first time I felt community here in Cincinnati, so I want to stay there. And I wanted to put down the roots, so to speak, because everyone was scared of Over-the-Rhine. And I said, and I'm not the first to do this. There are other families raising their kids in Over-the-Rhine. But, if I can tell somebody to go, let's go down to Over-the-Rhine or Findlay Market, I have to be able to say, I live there. I raised my 3 kids there. It's not dangerous to be in Over-the-Rhine. I wanted to say those words. Yes. And because of that, I had to stay there and raise my family there. And what a wonderful community it is for my kids. Yes. They all walk to school, to the School for Creative and Performing Arts. My husband, Andy, works in Over-the-Rhine. I worked at ArtsWave in Over-the-Rhine for 10 years. I'm in Avondale now with the Urban League. But it was very deliberate to make sure that I share how I feel welcomed in this community, to be able to welcome others into this community. And my work at the Urban League, I felt that there weren't enough opportunities or knowledge about opportunities growing up, because we were boxed out of opportunities because of the legalized racism during apartheid. And, when I came... That
drives you.
Yeah, that does drive me. It's a perspective that makes me credible to talk about the work and where we need to go. And I just feel that in my veins that, this is the kind of work we all should be thinking about. It should be front and center as we rise as a community. We have the richest of organizations, companies here, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies. But the poverty rate is incredible for the riches we have, right? And as I said before, this should be the business ROI to invest in the Urban League. I don't have to spell that out. You're investing in your next customer. You're investing in your next employee.
Right.
You don't want to spend a ton of money recruiting from outside. And so why don't we develop the people who are already here to be able to buy your products off the shelf? That, is what Cincinnati, people get jobs, they pay taxes. They support the economy right here.
Right.
So to tie it all together, I feel like my growing up in South Africa destined me in a way to do this work, and I'm exactly where I need to be at this very moment in time.
That's amazing, Janice. It shows. Your passion shows for the work that you do, for the community that you live in, and everything that you have said and do absolutely tracks.
Right.
So congratulations on designing a beautiful and successful life. Is there anything that we have not talked about that you absolutely want to talk about or would love to just let our audience know or understand?
Sure. And I'm looking at you, audience out there. Be a little curious about what the Urban League does, and go to our website, ulgso.org. We have so many opportunities, not for clients to come through our door, but volunteerism that we want you to check out. If for no other reason, when somebody asks you, do you know about the Urban League, that you can say, oh, yes, I do know about the Urban League. And, I know someone who benefit from their services. Just familiarize yourself with what we do. I'd love for you to share with others who might need us. So ulgso.org for anyone who is interested in learning more about the Urban League.
That's great.
Thank you so much, Janice. You took a childhood that was spent in an unequal system and turned it into a career spent moving resources towards people who need them the most. That is a remarkable thing to build a life around. So thank you so much.
Yes, and we'll make sure to put the website in the show notes so that everybody can learn more about the Urban League and also to learn more about ArtsWave and the work in the art space as well. And so I just want to thank you for the time today and for the conversation and everything you shared. So I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Clara. The honor was mine. I appreciated the opportunity to share more. And thank you for a wonderful conversation today. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're listening to Roots, Roots and Voices, Stories That Shape America. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and visit cincinnaticampus.org to stay connected. I'm Clara Matonodze. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening today. The voice you heard in this episode is one of thousands in this region, people whose roots run deep somewhere else and whose routes brought them here to this country. We are grateful they led us into their story.
If today's conversation stayed with you, share it. Pass it to someone who needs to hear it. Leave a review. And if you carry a story of your own roots, your own routes, we want to hear from you. Reach out through cincinnaticampus.org.
You can find Roots, Roots and Voices on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you listen. New episodes are rolling out now. Season 2 is made possible with the support of the Marketer Collaborative and the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. We are grateful for both partnerships.
Cincinnati Compass connects people to opportunity and builds a more inclusive region. Learn more at cincinnaticampus.org. Until next time.
Keep telling your story.